Please remember that the complete information for the class that you are about to view is at eliithecomputerguy.com. Not only do we have our videos there, but we have part lists, diagrams, pictures, and even complete code examples. So if you are watching this video and you want more information, please go to eliithecomputerguy.com. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class we're going to be creating a simple photo gallery stream. So imagine you have a lot of pictures for some reason. Possibly you went on a trip, possibly you have a new child, possibly wedding, whatever. Let's say you have a lot of images. You want to put them on your website, be able to have people be able to look at the images, but you don't want to have to go through a lot of time and trouble to code an actual image gallery, right? So a lot of the image gallery software out there, you have to go through time, trouble, plug in information, all that type of stuff. What you would really like to do is you would like to simply take the image files, literally just dump them into a folder, and then have that auto-magically create a gallery for you. Well, that's what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to be using PHP and CSS today, and we're going to be using what is called the Glob function in PHP. So what the Glob function allows you to do is basically you can point to a folder, and you can say pull out all of the files that match the criteria that I'm giving to you for. So something like star.jpg or star.mp4 or simply star. That's what we're going to be using today. Basically, take all of these file names, turn them into an array. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use the for each function, and using the for each function, we're going to step through that array, and for every file name that the glob function has retrieved, we're simply going to use the img src tag in HTML to turn that image file into an embedded image on the HTML document. And so the cool part about this is if you dump 5 images into the folder, then you're going to get a photo gallery stream of 5 images. If you dump 50 images into the folder, you're going to get a stream of 50 images. Literally, the only thing that you have to do once you've created this little snippet of code is copy and paste the image files into the folder, and voila, now you have a dynamically created gallery. You don't have to worry about additional settings or anything like that. So that is what I'm going to be showing you how to create today. So in order to do the project today, you are going to have to know a couple of different types of technology, at least to an adequate, decent degree, right? So I have built a LAMP server. So I've built an Ubuntu 18.04 LTS, Apache, MySQL, and PHP server, and that is what I'm going to be using as the web server for today. So what I'm going to be showing you today, though, you can do this on a basic shared hosting plan. So if you're using GoDaddy or HostGator or whatever else, you can use a basic shared hosting plan to be able to do what I'm doing today. But if you want to be able to spin up your own server, then in fact you're going to have to know how to spin up your own server. We're not going to go into that. I have a whole bunch of Linux classes on how to do that. The next thing, one of the important things to understand if you're spinning up your Linux server, is do make sure you get your permissions correct. So when you do go copy and paste, or basically transfer the image files however you want to, possibly with FTP, into the folder, into the destination folder, do make sure that basically everyone has the ability to read those images. One of the problems you can get into using this glob function is the glob function is more than happy to go through and collect all the names of the files, and then basically with PHP it'll then step through with the for each and actually print the img, src, everything else. But it can do all of that, but if everybody doesn't have the ability to read, basically to be able to view the images, all you're going to get is a bunch of blocks on your HTML document with no images in there. So you are going to have to understand, again, the basic administration for a LAMP server, and you're going to have to understand a little bit about permissions. Permissions is probably the only thing here that could actually really screw you up. Beyond that, again, this is going to be HTML and PHP, just a little bit of HTML and just a je suis, actually just a couple of lines of PHP. That's pretty easy. If you know anything about PHP, you should be able to follow along. And then finally, we are going to be using a bit of CSS in order to make the image gallery seem pretty. Again, so here you'll need to know a little bit of CSS. So you'll have to understand a bit about LAMP servers, you'll have to understand a bit about PHP, and you'll have to understand a bit about CSS. The important thing here, the one thing that will screw you up if you're not thinking about it though, is if you screw up the file permission permissions, basically you'll you'll wind up with a dynamic HTML document. You will get a dynamic HTML document. A useless dynamic HTML document, but a dynamic HTML document. So do make sure that you have the read permission is for everybody. So now that you have a basic understanding of what we're going to be doing today, we're going to go over to the computers and actually show you how this code and how the demonstration works. Do understand with my lab environment now, I actually have two different systems. So I have the normal lab computer that I normally use for most projects, and with that one I'm going to be using the web browser to access the web server on my other computer. So it's an entirely different computer that I've set up as a server. So that is what my lab environment looks like. So with that, let's go over to the lab computer just to show you what the photo gallery should look like when you're finished, and then we'll flip over to the server to show you how the code and everything else works. So here we are at my demonstration system for today. For this demonstration system, it really doesn't matter what it is. All you need is a web browser, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, whatever it is, and it needs to be able to connect to the LAMP server that you've created. So the LAMP server that I've created is the IP address of 10.0.1.28. Within that server, in the root of Apache, I've put a file called index.php, and that index.php file is basically this file. It's what creates this image gallery. And so this is the image gallery that we get at the end of the day. So I have all these pictures from when I went to Turkey. I simply exported them out of iPhoto, literally just then dumped them into the folder on the server, and now this index.php script has now dynamically created this photo gallery. So I could literally just dump more photos in, I could pull photos out. This is dynamically created, so there's no additional editing that I have to do. Now with this, using CSS, basically as I shrink the window size, you see that the images shrink along with it. And so this shows you how you can do something like this, and then people will be able to view it on a desktop computer. They'll be able to view it, larger files, and if they're on a mobile device, they'll be able to view it too. With CSS, I have done some little things here, like I've created a div and then used nth of type, basically to go from gray, from a dark gray to a light gray background. I just put that kind of CSS formatting in there just to show you that you can do that type of thing. I think with an image gallery like this, as you're flipping through, is just an easy visual way to see as you're going through all of the different pictures. But this is the gallery that we're going to be creating today. Again, the PHP function that we're going to be using is this function called glob. So basically what you can do with this function called glob is you call the function called glob, you tell it what patterns you're looking for, basically for file types. Then it turns all of those files that it finds that matches those patterns into an array, and then once you've done that, you can step through the array and print out whatever you want. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be printing out the embedded images in an HTML document, but you could also simply print out a list of files in a folder. You could do other things. So with that, let's go over to the actual server to show you how all of this works. So here we are on my Ubuntu server. Again, you can be doing this with just a command line server. You do not need a GUI. I am using a GUI, a graphical user interface, just so you guys have a better idea of what's going on. It's easier to visualize for you as a student what's going on, but everything that I'm doing here, you could be doing simply at the command line. I'm using Ubuntu 18.04 LTS, but this should work for any Ubuntu version or really any Linux version. The first thing that I want to show you is I do have one folder and two documents here, and this is the structure of the code that we've created. So basically we have the index.php. So the index.php, this is where when users go to this particular server, this is what the server finds as the default. So basically it knows anything called index.php or anything called index.html. That is what the default web page is, and so it opens up that index.php and then runs the code that's there. I then have a style sheet. So again, when I talked about CSS styling, I have a style sheet simply called picstyle.css, and then here I have a folder called pics, P-I-C-S, and in that folder, these are the images that I exported from iPhoto or whatever and simply dumped into this particular folder. Again, the important thing with this, the most important thing with this is your permissions. So let's go over to terminal for a second, and I just want to show you what you should be looking for here. So we can just go to terminal. Oops, if I can spell terminal. And then when we go to terminal, what we're going to do is we're going to go to that folder within the terminal. So root var www html. So that's going to drop us into the root for the Apache server. From here we do ls-l, and basically one of the important things that we want to see here is for the pix folder, you need to make sure that that pix folder has at least the read attribute. So again, other people, everyone is able to read. If we then go into the pix folder, so we go cd pix, and then we do ls-l, basically to list out everything in the folder. The important thing that we're going to need to see here is, again, that everyone has that read permission. So the owner of the folder has the read-write permission, the group owner here has the read permission, and everybody has the read permission. Really, in order to make this thing work, everybody has to have the read permission. If they do not have the read permission, then literally when the HTML document is created, they will not be able to view the image files, and then it's all kind of a waste of time. So do make sure that you have those permissions. Again, if you don't understand how that works, I have classes on how that works. So from that, let's just actually go over and take a look at the PHP. So this is the file that I created in PHP. So in order to create this file, I simply use gedit. Again, when you're writing simple PHP code, simple CSS code, all you need is an ASCII text editor. Again, you can use gedit, Notepad, whatever you want to use. So for this particular project, I just decided to use gedit since it's a pretty simple project. So with the PHP, one of the things that I did here is I actually wrote HTML and then simply put the PHP in the middle here. So with PHP, you can do this. So basically, you can actually call the PHP more or less in the middle of an HTML document. So this is still called index.php. But what I did is I created the rest of the HTML document and then simply basically pasted the PHP code into the middle of that HTML document. So what we're doing here is obviously we're opening up the HTML document. We're opening up the head. The important thing for this particular project is that we are referencing the style sheet. So link, relation style sheet, ref, pixstyle.css. So this is very important here. So basically for all that CSS styling, for the light gray background, for the gray background, for the size of the images, all of that kind of stuff, that actually comes from this particular CSS sheet. Then we close the head, and of course we close the body, or then we open the body, I'm sorry. Then from there, this is where we're going to put the PHP code. And so for the PHP code, it's all pretty simple. So we're going to open the PHP with the open PHP tag. We are then going to create a file list array. So basically we're going to create an array called file list. How that array gets populated is we are going to use that glob function, and then basically what we're going to say is we're going to give a path to the files that we want listed, right? So this is period /pix /. So basically what we're saying here is in the pix directory. So from this location in the pix directory, what kind of files do I want glob to detect? Do I want glob to put into the array? I am simply putting a star here, right? So I'm simply putting a star, so that is going to grab everything in that directory. I could theoretically put star.jpg or star.jpg or star.gif, something like that. But one of the problems you're going to run in there is, again, I want this to kind of auto-magically work. I want this to be as auto-magic as possible. So if I put star.jpg here, and then in the folder you put files with that extension, then they're not going to be detected, right? If you put GIFs in there for some reason, then they would not be grabbed and detected. So simply by putting star, what it does is everything, every file that's in that folder, that will be put into the array. The only problem you can have there is if for some reason you put other HTML documents or any other files or file types into that particular folder, they will be grabbed too, and then you'll get a weird little error. Basically, you'll get a little X box or whatever when it tries to print it out in the HTML document. So that's one of those things that you have to think about. So again, if you know specifically the file type you want to grab, again, you could do star.jpg. That would work fine. Again, I'm simply using star because that's how I want this to roll. So again, glob, parentheses, open double quotation marks. Basically, you put the file path, and then from the file path, you then put what types of files, close the double quotation marks, close the parentheses, and of course, we have the semicolon as the delimiter. Past that, we're simply using the for each function. So I've talked about this for in PHP, and basically what for each does is really nice, is when you have an array, what you can basically do is you can step through the array, and you can say for every value in the array, do something, right? So this is great. So I'm automatically creating an array here. I'm assigning the values of that array to file list, and then for each, I'm then stepping through file list. And so basically here, what you do is for each value in file list, per iteration, you're going to then make file name have that value, right? So basically for each file name, while this steps through, this file name variable will have that value. And then what we're going to do here is we're simply going to say echo, and then I'm going to actually format how I want this thing to look. So basically, double quotation marks, and then I'm going to create a div. So we're going to have a div. Then we're going to have an img src equals, right? So that's going to be there. Then one of the things I've done here is I put a single quotation mark. Why I've put the single quotation mark on either side here is if you notice, when we go and we actually look at the pics, you'll notice there's a space there. Right? You got to be careful about that kind of thing. So if the file name is all one word, then you won't have to worry about that single quotation mark. But remember, if you have spaces in your file names, then you have to surround whenever you reference the file name with a quotation mark to make sure it will actually be displayed properly. So basically what we're doing here is we're simply saying, okay, so we're going to basically put a single quotation mark around this file name. Then we have to close the double quotation mark. We concatenate, so we put a period. We say file name, so whatever the value of file name is. We concatenate. We open the double quotation mark again. We then close this. So this single quotation mark here is encapsulating the file name. So the double quotation marks are encapsulating these, and the single quotation marks are encapsulating the file name. Then simply what we do here is then we close the img src tag, then we're going to close the div tag, and then I'm simply going to put a break, so that's going to put a gap. Then we're going to do the double quotation marks to close this side. So basically you have to create two sides. So you have this side of the embedding the image, then you concatenate, you add the file name in the middle, and then you close out the embedding the image. Then we're going to use the semicolon, again, to close all of this, since this is PHP, that's the delimiter in PHP. Then we're simply going to close the squiggly brackets. So that's what you use for a function. Then we're simply going to close PHP, and then we're going to close the body, and then we're going to close the HTML. So basically with this, it is going to step through. So with the glob, it is going to go through. It's going to find all of the file names in the pics directory. Oops. Or it's going to find all the file names in the pics directory, turn that into an array called file list, and then we are going to use the for each function to step through the array file list and print out all of the file names. Past that, again, we have the CSS, and that's where you can go and you can start to try to make things pretty. Here, I don't have very much in the CSS. Basically, what I've done is for the img element or tag, what I've simply said is this is a block display. I want the width to be 50% the size of the screen. So when you saw those images resize, the reason that they're resizing is because it's dynamic. I'm simply saying I want the width of these images to be 50% the size of the screen. The height I want to be auto. So if we're automatically formatting the width in order to keep the aspect ratio the same, then I have to make height auto. So you can make height 50% and width auto, or width 50% or height auto. But if you want to keep the aspect ratio, one has to be a percentage, the other one has to be auto. Then past that, basically what we're doing here is I'm simply centering the images. So margin hyphen left is going to be auto, and margin hyphen right is going to be auto. What this does is this simply then centers the images in the middle of the screen. Then what I've done for the div is basically for the div element, the div tag, I've simply said the background color should be light gray. So that's all I've done. And so when you take a look at the gallery, the background color for the div is light gray. And then what I did, in order to go from light gray to dark gray, light gray to dark gray, light gray to dark gray, I use something called nth of type. So in CSS, you can do nth of type. So you can say however many of these types do something different, do a little bit different CSS. So for here, you do div colon nth of type. And then what I've said is even. So for every even iteration of div, this is what I want to have happen. And so here what I've said is I want the background to be gray. So the first one will be light gray, and then it'll be dark gray. Light gray, dark gray, light gray, dark gray, light gray, dark gray, so on and so forth. And so that's where, if we go back to the demonstration machine, you can see how all of this looks when we're finished. And that's how we get this particular example. So again, with that CSS, with the div, for the first one is light gray, and then for the second one is dark gray. For the third one is light gray. For the fourth, even, is dark gray. Fifth, light gray. Sixth, even, dark gray. Again, margin hyphen left auto, margin hyphen right auto, that centers the image in the middle of the screen. And then with the width being 50%, that's what then resizes the images whenever I either grow or shrink the window that we're looking at them in. And so this is the basics of how to create a dynamic gallery. For this, again, all you need is PHP and CSS. And if you want to spin up a LAMP server, a Linux Apache MySQL PHP web server, that will be useful for you too. But this is a basic example of how to do it. So now you know how to create a dynamic photo stream gallery. Yay! You use the glob function in PHP. The glob function, again, you tell it what pattern you're looking for, the folder location and the pattern you're looking for. It will then turn all the file names that match that pattern into an array. You then use the for each function to then step through the array and do something. In our particular example, all we were doing is printing out the img src tag in HTML in order to display the images on an HTML document. And it's really pretty easy. Now, I know a lot of the noobs out there, a lot of the people that are going to take over the world, take over the tech world, are probably looking at this and going, well, that's kind of a sucky gallery. That's kind of a crappy gallery. You can't really do a lot with it. But one of the things I want you to think about in the real world of being a professional is sometimes you don't have a lot of time to make things perfect. Again, let's say you're on an organizational retreat, or you're with a company or something like that, and you have a lot of people. They've taken a lot of pictures, and then different people in the company need different pictures. So maybe the PR people want certain pictures, maybe employees want to share different pictures, the CEOs and all that want different pictures, the whole 9 yards, right? You could sit there and spend a day or two coding the perfect gallery and labeling and tagging and doing everything you're supposed to as a professional. But realistically, you've got a whole list of work orders you got to get through, and really the last thing in the world that you want to do is build a photo gallery. So one of the cool things about something like this is you can basically just get all of the image files from, again, all the people that took pictures. You can simply dump those image files into a folder, do a little CSS, format it so it looks a little tiny bit pretty. You can deploy it, and then you can let everybody do whatever the hell they want to do with the pictures. Again, one of the big things as a technology professional is not to overthink things, not to give yourself more work when frankly you're already overloaded. Again, that's one of the big problems you run into with technology professionals is many times they're already over their eyeballs in work, and yet a project like this comes along and all of a sudden they'll spend 2 or 3 days, coming up with some fancy photo gallery as the real work that they need to be doing is just getting backed up. So being able to do something like this is just an easy way that you can publish those image files to again, to the company, to the rest of the world, whatever else, and just simply walk away from it. So again, this is the kind of cool thing that you can do with just a tiny bit of code using PHP and CSS. As always, I enjoyed doing this video and look forward to seeing you on the next one. If you like the content that I create, please think about going to eliTheComputerGuy.com and becoming a member or donating. Please understand that all of the educational videos are in front of the paywall. That includes the videos, that includes the notes, the diagrams, and the code example. All of that is freely available and in front of the paywall. But if you want to watch opinion videos or if you want to be able to comment, you do need to become a member. Membership is $5 a month or $60 a year and gives you access to those opinion videos and the ability to comment. If you don't want to become a member, you just want to give a one-time donation, there's also a donate button where you can do that. Please understand, in order to provide the education that I am, it does cost money. Servers cost money, equipment costs money, travel costs money. All of these things cost a reasonable amount of money, and the fact of the matter is YouTube's advertising program no longer supports creators the way that it used to. So if you want these classes to continue to stick around and you find them to be valuable, please think about either becoming a monthly member or donating a few dollars for this project.